It was a quiet moment in the garden, the kind of peaceful stillness that hangs in the air just before something important happens. The sun filtered softly through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the stone path, and the breeze whispered lightly through the leaves. That's when Caroline Levitt noticed him, small, fragile, and completely still. He wasn't running or playing or exploring the hedges like children often do. He was sitting alone, his shoulders slightly hunched, his head bowed. From a distance, she could tell something wasn't right. She moved closer, quietly, not wanting to startle him, and that's when she saw it, his face streaked with tears, his hands tightly clenched in his lap. There was something about the way he sat there that pulled at her heart. It wasn't just a child crying. It was a deeper sadness, one that didn't match his age. Kids cry over scraped knees, broken toys, and bedtime arguments. This was different. This was a kind of silence and sorrow that doesn't come from toys or tantrums. It came from something weightier, something buried beneath the surface. She didn't call out to him right away. Instead, she watched for a moment, trying to piece together what could be causing so much emotion in someone so young. As she approached, her footsteps soft against the gravel, she noticed the way he glanced up and then quickly looked away, like he didn't want to be seen. Not out of embarrassment, but out of a quiet desperation to stay invisible, as if being noticed might make the moment harder to bear. She knelt beside him slowly, her voice barely above a whisper when she spoke. "Hey, are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. His lip trembled, and for a moment it looked like he might shut down entirely. But something about her tone, her presence, made him open up, just a little. He shook his head, and in that small gesture, she saw everything. He wasn't okay. He wasn't just sad. He was hurting. And not in the way that a scraped knee could fix. She didn't push him. She just sat with him quietly, giving him space to gather his thoughts, to find the words. Children have a way of holding on to truths with a kind of purity that adults forget. When they finally speak from the heart, it's raw and real. And that's what happened next. A small, cracked voice began to speak, unsure at first, but gaining strength with every word. What came out wasn't a complaint or a demand. It wasn't a childish protest. It was a confession, wrapped in the kind of language only a child could use. Honest, unfiltered, and deeply emotional. He talked about feelings of being overwhelmed, of not knowing where he fit in, of being surrounded by so much attention, but still feeling invisible. He mentioned how hard it was to understand the world when it moves so fast around you, how even the people closest to you can seem distant. There was no blame in his words, just confusion, and a quiet kind of pain that made Caroline's chest tighten. She didn't interrupt. She listened. Every word felt like a window into a soul too young to carry such weight. And in that moment, what struck her most wasn't the content of what he said. It was the courage it took to say it, to be vulnerable, to admit sadness. In a world that often expects children to be resilient without understanding their struggles, this was a moment of extraordinary openness. It was a moment that revealed how even the smallest among us can carry burdens that go unnoticed by the rest of the world. Caroline didn't try to fix anything. She didn't offer empty reassurances. She simply acknowledged his pain, validated his words, and let him know through her silence and her presence that he wasn't alone, that he was seen, that his feelings mattered. It was a simple moment on the surface, one person noticing another in distress. But beneath that simplicity was something profound, the quiet power of being present, the ability to offer solace not through answers, but through understanding. The garden, once just a backdrop of trees and stone, became the setting for a deeply human connection, one that would stay with her and perhaps with him for a long time. There are moments in life that catch you off guard, not because of their dramatic nature, but because of their quiet intensity. This was one of those moments. The words that followed weren't loud or frantic. They were soft, almost whispered, as though speaking them too loudly would make them too real. They emerged slowly, like someone testing the water before stepping in, unsure if the temperature was safe. But once the first few slipped out, the rest followed in a stream of quiet pain that felt far too old for someone so young. It wasn't what was said that shocked her. It was the weight behind it, a weight that no child should have to carry. Thoughts about feeling left out, unseen in the noise, surrounded by people but isolated all the same. There was a tone of resignation in the voice, like this wasn't a new sadness, but something familiar. Something that had taken root and grown silently over time, unnoticed. This wasn't a case of momentary sadness. It was a window into a deeper loneliness, the kind that builds slowly until it becomes part of you. There was a vulnerability in the way the story was told. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't designed for sympathy. It was just real. Honest in the way only a child can be. And what made it hit even harder was the contrast between the innocence of youth and the complexity of the emotions being expressed. Words about wishing for attention, for connection, not in the material sense, but in the way eyes meet and hearts understand. Not wanting gifts or gadgets, but presence. Real presence. The kind that says, I see you, I hear you, you matter. It was a confession, in the truest sense of the word. A spilling of emotion that had no outlet until now. The kind of admission that only comes when someone feels safe, when they sense that what they say won't be dismissed or brushed off with a smile. It's hard to describe the feeling of being entrusted with that kind of truth. It's heavier than it sounds. And in that moment, it felt like holding something fragile and precious. Something that had been hidden away for too long. What was especially heartbreaking wasn't just the loneliness itself. It was the confusion around it. The constant questioning. Why do I feel this way when everything around me looks perfect? Why does it seem like I'm the only one who feels out of place? These weren't just random thoughts. They were part of a much deeper internal dialogue, one that had clearly been going on for some time. It was clear that this wasn't the first time these feelings had surfaced, just the first time they'd found their voice. The honesty was staggering. It stripped away any illusion of childhood being a carefree time. It reminded her that children, no matter how protected or privileged, are not immune to emotional complexity. They see more than we give them credit for. They absorb more than we notice. And they feel things just as deeply, sometimes more deeply, because they don't yet have the filters or distractions that adults use to numb their pain. What was spoken that day didn't just express sadness, it showed insight. It showed a level of emotional awareness that most adults struggle to reach. In that garden, surrounded by trees and silence, a truth was spoken that left a mark. A simple truth, yet powerful. Sometimes being surrounded by people isn't enough. Sometimes what you need most is someone to really see you, to acknowledge that your feelings are valid, even if they're difficult to understand. The pain didn't come from any single event, but from a buildup of quiet moments where connection was missing. And when it finally came out in the form of a story that broke her heart. Not because it was tragic, but because it was real. It was one of those moments that shifts something inside you, that reminds you how fragile the human spirit can be and how strong it is at the same time. To speak up in that way, to put words to feelings that had no name, took courage. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't staged, it was just raw, heartfelt truth. There's something powerful about silence when it's paired with understanding. In that quiet garden, surrounded by stillness and the soft rustle of wind, it wasn't words that mattered most at first. It was presence. She didn't arrive with an agenda, didn't try to fill the space with questions or advice. Instead, she simply sat, offering something that had been missing for far too long. A calm, non-judgmental presence that told someone else, without saying a word, "You are not alone." There was no panic in her movement, no exaggerated concern. Just a gentle grace in how she approached, as if she instinctively knew that what was needed most was compassion, not solutions. It was rare to witness something so understated yet so meaningful. The way she lowered herself to the ground, placing herself not above but beside, made all the difference. It was the kind of gesture that says, "I'm here with you," not "I'm here to fix you." And that distinction, subtle as it may seem, changes everything. What followed was not an interrogation, but an invitation, an opening, a soft cue. That said, "It's safe to speak." And when the story unfolded, slowly and with hesitation, she didn't rush it. She let each word land, each sentence breathe. She didn't react with shock or pity, but with quiet attentiveness, the kind that told the speaker that their words were worth listening to, that their emotions were valid. In a world that so often tries to rush through pain or dismiss it as inconvenient, she made space for it. Real space. She offered no platitudes, no quick-fix advice. There were no cliches about being strong or looking on the bright side. Instead, she listened with her whole being, eyes, body, and heart. And it was that kind of listening that made all the difference. Not passive listening, but active presence. A kind of attention that is rarely given, especially to the young, who are often underestimated when they speak about matters of the heart. She didn't need to say much to communicate everything that mattered. Sometimes the greatest kindness lies in restraint, in allowing someone to feel what they feel without trying to edit or solve it. As the story unfolded, filled with emotions too large for the small body it came from, she responded in the simplest, most human way possible. A nod here. A quiet, steady breath. A moment where her eyes filled with tears, not from sympathy alone, but from connection. Because what was being expressed was universal. The longing to be seen, to be known, to be understood. And in that garden, with no stage, no spotlight, and no expectation, that longing was met with genuine care. There's a unique strength in compassion, especially when it comes from someone who doesn't try to outshine the moment. She didn't center herself. She didn't make it about her own experiences or shift the focus to what she thought should happen next. She stayed grounded in that moment, entirely present, absorbing the emotion rather than deflecting it. It wasn't performative. It was authentic, and authenticity has a way of healing simply by existing. What she gave that day wasn't grand or dramatic. It was quiet, and that made it powerful. She gave someone the room to speak truth without fear of being dismissed. She provided a rare kind of safety, emotional safety, the kind that allows for rawness, for sadness, for confusion, all to exist without being tidied up or explained away. That kind of safety can be life-changing. It can be the start of healing, not because the pain disappears, but because it's finally acknowledged. In that brief exchange, she offered more than comfort. She offered dignity. She made it clear through action more than words that emotional honesty is not only acceptable, it's respected. And in doing so, she modeled what it means to truly show up for another human being. Not by leading them out of their sadness, but by walking into it with them hand in hand with no need to rush to the other side. It's easy to forget in the noise of headlines and social media that behind every carefully curated image and public persona lies a human being, a person with layers, with histories, with quiet hurts and unspoken hopes. Sometimes all it takes is one honest moment to pull the curtain back and remind us that what we see isn't all there is. The garden that day became more than just a backdrop. It turned into a place where masks fell away and raw, unfiltered emotion took center stage. What unfolded wasn't some scandalous revelation or dramatic confession. It was something more intimate, more universally human. A moment of emotional honesty that pierced through the expectations and assumptions placed on those constantly seen through the lens of public life. And what made it so powerful wasn't just the sadness itself, but the way it was shared. Gently, vulnerably, and without apology. There was no script, no performance. Just a deeply felt truth that had been waiting for a space safe enough to be voiced. In that space, free from judgment or expectation, something rare occurred. Real connection. Not the kind forged through common interests or convenience, but through empathy. A shared understanding that no matter who we are or what the world thinks of us, we all carry things we don't always show. It's one of the strange ironies of life. those who seem to have it all are often the ones struggling hardest to feel grounded, to feel known. The emotions shared that day weren't unique to one person or one circumstance. They were echoes of what many feel but don't always say out loud. The ache of being misunderstood, the weight of living up to an image, the quiet longing for someone to truly see beyond the surface. That day was a reminder that emotional struggles aren't reserved for the broken or the visibly hurting. They touch everyone, even those who appear to be thriving. There's something humbling about witnessing that kind of openness. It shifts the way we see others. It softens judgment, quiets assumptions, and opens the door to compassion. When someone peels back the layers and reveals their vulnerability, it's an invitation, not to fix, but to understand. And when that invitation is met with patience and grace, a different kind of healing takes place. One that doesn't rely on solutions, but on presence, on being with, not above. The beauty of what happened in that garden wasn't just in the words spoken, but in what they revealed. That emotional honesty, even when uncomfortable, is a form of strength. That acknowledging pain doesn't weaken us, it frees us. It gives others permission to do the same. And in a world where so much energy is spent on maintaining appearances, that kind of freedom is revolutionary. This moment also challenged the assumption that age or status somehow shields people from emotional complexity. It reminded everyone present that emotional needs don't vanish with success, nor are they diminished by youth. They remain constant, quiet currents flowing beneath the surface, waiting for acknowledgement. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet setting, a caring presence, and a willingness to listen for those needs to rise to the surface. What stood out most was the gentleness of it all. There was no spectacle, no rush to resolution. Just time. Time. To feel. Time to be. And in that simplicity there was dignity. There was respect. A kind of reverence for the truth that had been shared, and an understanding that it didn't need to be explained away or minimized. It just needed to be held. That afternoon in the garden wasn't just about one person's sadness, it became a mirror, a reflection of what many feel, but rarely say. It was a reminder that the human heart doesn't care about titles, appearances, or reputations. It simply wants to be understood, to be seen, to be loved. And when those needs are met with kindness, even for just a moment, something profound shifts, not only in the one who receives it, but in those who witness it too. What took place in that quiet garden wasn't just an emotional exchange. It was a glimpse into something many of us forget in the rush of our daily lives. The undeniable need for connection, and the powerful impact of simply being present for one another. It wasn't about fixing a problem or offering advice. It was about acknowledging a truth, no matter how difficult or tender, and holding space for it. In that moment, a bridge was built between two people, not based on familiarity or shared history, but rooted in compassion. The story serves as a gentle yet potent reminder that beneath every surface, beneath every name, every title, every public identity, there's a soul in need of understanding. Too often we assume that success, recognition, or a life surrounded by people somehow insulates a person from loneliness or inner turmoil. But the truth is, emotional pain does not discriminate. It exists quietly behind smiles, behind the perfectly filtered images, behind the reputations. And sometimes, it only takes one person choosing to listen without judgment to unlock that pain and offer comfort. The real power of what unfolded that day lies in the simplicity of the response. No elaborate plan, no rehearsed dialogue, just human empathy, raw, unpolished, and sincere. That kind of empathy can't be forced or faked. It has to come from a place of deep awareness, from someone who's willing to put aside assumptions and just be with someone else in their moment of need. In many ways, this is what we're all searching for, whether we admit it or not. Someone who sees past the roles we play and connects with who we really are. What makes this story linger in the mind isn't just the emotional weight of the words that were spoken, it's the tenderness of the response they were met with. A response that didn't try to diminish the pain or redirect the conversation, but instead offered quiet reassurance that being vulnerable is not only okay, it's brave. And that being emotionally honest doesn't make us weak, it makes us real. In today's world, where everything moves fast and attention spans grow shorter, taking the time to truly listen is an act of love. Choosing to sit with someone in silence, to honor their experience without rushing to resolve it, is a gift. It's a lesson we all need to remember. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just be there, fully, honestly. Ultimately, what happened in that moment is something timeless. It speaks to the kind of connection we all crave and the kind of kindness we all have the power to give. Not through grand gestures, but through presence, through patience, through seeing someone, not for who they are in the eyes of the world, but for who they are when no one's looking. That is where the heart of this story lives, and that is what makes